Nobody ever gets here on time. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we're live now, Councilman Burnett. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to SISTABIZ. My name is Tamara Brown. I'm the host with my co-host, Nicole Orr. We have a special guest with us this evening, Councilman of the 8th District, Kristerfer Burnett. And so we're going to give him a minute to kind of get arranged. He's waiting for his 8 o'clock basketball game. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And so this show, we talk a lot about minority businesses, women-owned businesses. And so I specifically wanted to have you on because we've worked together in the past with my employment with the city and then a little after. I know your passion for minority businesses and getting the program right in the city. And I understand that you really understand the importance of getting the program right. And recently, you've put out some legislation to help with these programs. So we kind of want to first start off by talking about your district. Or I think you're going to have one of your district members on, a restaurant owner.
Yep.
Which is fantastic. We'll have her come on. So just tell us about yourself, how long you've been in city council, and a little bit about your district.
One, thank you for having me, and thank you for all of your hard work in creating this platform to talk about business in Baltimore, Black-owned businesses in Baltimore. So just want to start with that as a thank you, and for your partner in the work. Would not have been doing any of this stuff if it wasn't for our connection and shared passion for that. So I just want to start there with a thank you. But yeah, I'm Councilman Burnett. I represent the 8th District, which encompasses Southwest and Northwest Baltimore. So I try to, I know we're a city of neighborhoods, so I try to explain it by neighborhoods. So if you started on the Frederick Avenue corridor, where we're actually going to have two amazing chefs join us in a little bit from Sugar Mamas on that Frederick Avenue corridor. I have from Hilton to the county line, so that Irvington, Beachfield, Yale Heights area. I have the most of Edmondson Village on the Edmondson Avenue corridor. So Edmondson Village, Uplands, Tin Hills, Hunting Ridge, that area, up through Cooks Lane, and the West Hills neighborhoods, all the way up to Howard Park, Forest Park, Dickeyville. So that pretty much the outer, I always tell people just keep going. As far west as you can go before you hit the county line is my district. And I got elected in 2016 and reelected again in 2020. So I'm thankful for that and the opportunity to continue to serve. I'm on a number of committees. I chair the Human Trafficking Collaborative in Baltimore City, on the Ways and Means Committee, which is new for me. So it's a lot of issues around the budget, which is how I started to get into this conversation around minority business. I'm also on the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee, Legislative Oversight Committee, Environmental Control Board, a whole bunch of stuff. I stay busy, but most of my day is also, as always, spent in my communities with my constituents, doing the real work on the ground. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. So look, I have a question I always wanted to ask you. The Kristerfer with a K. I mean, sprechen Sie Deutsch? Like, I only saw that when I lived in Germany, all of the Ks for the first name. So is there any German descent from the Kristerfer with a K?
Not that I'm aware of. My dad came up with it, and in my grandfather's house, there's some drywall in the basement where you can see where he was. My parents had me really young, so they were like 16 and 17 when they had me. And so he was at that house drawing up different versions of how to spell the name, and you can actually still see some of that on the drywall in the house. So I don't think a senior in high school, he was thinking that deep about it. I think he just wanted something pretty creative. And I'm named after my uncle. I have an uncle named Kristofer, who passed away when I was young. But yeah, other than that, no, I'm not aware of any German connection. I'll ask my dad though. I might be wrong. I'll ask him.
Right. Wow. That's okay. I always wanted to ask you that, so I had to ask that.
No, it's fair. I get it a lot, and no one ever spells it right, and I don't expect them to at this point.
So I think we're going to bring on some of your constituents, the owners of Sugar Mamas, and they may need to turn their cameras on so that we can see them. But until then, again, I just want to reemphasize that, a lot of times in the media, we see a lot of the city council members. I didn't know a lot about you when I started working, or much politicians when I started working for the city, but I do remember the investigative hearing you had when you were the chair of the economic development. You were part of that committee. I believe it was that committee, right?
Legislative oversight. Yeah, I had
the legislative oversight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do remember looking at you during the whole hearing and seeing like, okay, he gets it. He sees something's wrong there, and so you really got it. And we don't see you a lot on the media, and you're just one of those council members that I respect. Will probably be only, and it's no knock to your colleagues, but I just didn't work with them as much.
Sure.
But you really are just a person that I feel actually does the work, and you're not really, a lot of people just don't realize the great work that you're doing. So
I appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I really respect that. So their mic and cameras are not connected, so we're having some problems getting them on. So we'll continue to talk, and maybe they can get that fixed. It looks like our producer is saying they're having some problems connecting. So let's talk about some of the legislation that you did do. And I know that at the end of last year, you were working on some oversight with the emergency procurement. Like that was a big deal. And I think the issue was when COVID first hit, that's an opportunity where the city doesn't have to put things out for bid, and they were just kind of getting all this emergency equipment. And I think you were a little surprised to see that there was not a lot of minority participation there, and it's really not supported. It's not reported to city council. There's kind of like a clause in the code that said they'll bring it kind of like in a timely fashion, and there's really no transparency in the process, right?
Yeah, so that was at the very beginning of the pandemic. There was it was in the budget committee in the last term, and I started asking questions about just overall emergency procurement. What's the process? How are we? And it was really just focused on COVID. And one of the things that one of my mentors had always pointed out to me that you really got to dig in during emergencies to figure out where the money's going, because a lot of people, unfortunately, make a lot of money when things are going awry, and we need to look out for our people. And so I had that sort of in the back of my head, like, all right, let me make sure I'm sort of probing. Obviously, we need to respond as quickly as possible to this national and global crisis. But at the same time, that should not be an excuse to leave Black-owned, women-owned businesses behind when we are spending millions and millions of dollars. And so it started actually in February of 2020 when I first started asking that line of questioning, and former council member Pinkett started asking similar questions in the hearing as well. And what we were told in the beginning was like, we're in the beginning of this process. We're trying to figure it out. We do try to do the best we can, but essentially for the viewers, when there's a declared state of emergency, the waiver process gets relaxed. And the process to engage minority and women-owned business gets relaxed. And there is some logic behind it in that, like, when you're trying to procure things as quickly as you can to respond to an emergency, whether that's a pandemic or a street collapse like we had for Howard Street a few years back, or any sort of just big, we got to move fast. We got to get X products and respond. And so what I was basically told was that, while we had, for sake of expediency, we're going to relax a lot of that process. We'll do the best we can to make sure that we're still engaging minority businesses in that. And so I said, okay. And knowing that this is going to be a long pandemic, I was like, all right, I'm going to come back to this. And so that was at the beginning in February. And then in May, during the budget hearings, which we have coming up again at the end of the month, I asked again, like, well, where are we with this? Can you report out on how many minority businesses we've done procurement from? And I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's clear I'm in the car. I'm sorry, y'all. But it was astounding at the gap between minority business and non-minority owned business, non-MBEs, I guess would be the right word, how much had been spent to that point. And that was only a few months in. That was between February and May. So then I asked again in the fall, where are we? And then again, actually a few weeks ago, I asked for the data. And it is just, again, an astounding amount of money being spent without any real. And I think we talked about this, where you said that, there was a woman-owned business that had, been making PPE for 10 years and never got a call from the city in that 10-year period, let alone the pandemic. And so for me, that was like a huge wake-up call that all right, we cannot stay asleep at the wheel here. Exactly what one of my mentors was telling me is happening right now. People are making millions of dollars off of the city, and not in any way doing the right thing and making sure that we are including MBEs in that emergency procurement. And I thought it really also spoke to implicit bias as well. And that, like, when you tell me, like, you're going to use the relationships we have, we're going to be intentional about it. But a lot of that, if you're not being intentional about it, or it's not written into the code, or you're forced to, I try to always assume goodwill with people, but you're going to call the person, you're going to call the person you have a relationship with. And we know that a lot of MBEs don't have that same sort of cozy relationship with government officials as non-MBEs do. It is a reality in Baltimore. We know this. They don't use it. We have not. This whole conversation around equity is something that is relatively new to government, that we have done within the last few years. And so it takes a lot of time to really break down those barriers. But if we're not having real honest and straightforward conversations about it, we're going to continue to be left behind. And so you and I work together on a bill to take that on. And I'm proud of it, because while we're still in the throes of this pandemic and have a ways to go, there will be several other emergencies that occur. I mean, that is an inevitable outcome, that we needed to close that loophole, and we did.
Yes, thank you so much. I do remember when it hit, and I do know there was some processes. There was actual process that the city was going to take in acquiring the goods, and it didn't include the MBE office. So we were very concerned about that. I was like hitting up Councilman Pinkett, and like just getting in his ear and getting in his ear. And so I'm really glad that you were both really instrumental in at least letting them know we're aware that you're not using these businesses. And so now I think the process, thanks to the bill that you moved forward and finally, I think, got approved, there's a little more transparency where the council will get more of a report on that. And there should always be a report. I mean, we should be able to go online and see how they're using businesses, and that just wasn't available. So yes, the minority businesses, we did have certified businesses that provided PPE. The general philosophy with most jurisdictions, cities, states, is that minority businesses can only be used as subcontracting. But when you have an opportunity like this with COVID, where you don't have to go through the bid process and where you're just able to acquire the goods from businesses that you're familiar with. And I don't think we were familiar with buying PPE. And so that, we weren't even really familiar with a lot of these businesses they were using when we had certified businesses that provided it. So yes, we did have a success story. We did get someone that actually worked with the city, but it just wasn't enough of that. And so again, I thank you for that. And that's when I knew he's the one, he's got it, and he really pushed and pushed, and is still pushing. And I know the numbers are far away from where they should be. I mean, it's the same businesses keep getting the same business, and they're not minority businesses. So,
but he's outnumbered. It's a big outnumbered. So you're like outnumbered 1 to what, 13?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we got support for it, but yeah, I mean, but you always need somebody that's going to champion it. And I'll admit, I am learning on the go so much from Tamara on this issue. This was not something I ran on or knew a whole lot about. And it's just not my background, but I see we got Sugar Mamas is here. There we go. Hey. But yeah, if you're not being intentional about it and speaking up about it, then it just, my experience in the short time I've been in office, it doesn't happen if you don't have somebody that's speaking out. So, but I do want to spotlight one of my favorite places to eat in District 8 in the city of Baltimore. Y'all have to swing by Sugar Mamas, whether you come in there for breakfast or some of their pastas or anything. We have amazing chefs, amazing cooks who I've been trying to throw up, even on Prime TV and everything else, trying to spotlight the work that they're doing in Irvington. So I wanted to give you all an opportunity to talk about your business, how things are going, favorite menu items. Sorry, I don't want to take over your show, but
yes, thank you. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself, and thank you for, I know he said you guys were really, really busy and he wasn't sure he would be able to get you on, but he really wanted to spotlight some of his constituents, which I think is great. A lot of our council members don't do that. They want to spotlight themselves. And again, just like, Councilman Burnett, in his nature, he just wants to do what's right. So tell us about your restaurant.
So my name is Sheena. I'm one of the owners here at Sugar Mamas. We've been here for 3 years. We've been open during the entire time during the pandemic, and we're progressing. Thankfully, people are they're coming out, they're supporting, whether it's through Uber Eats or, you know, if they're coming and calling in, they are supporting. So we've been open. Yeah, we've been open.
And did you see that the pandemic really impact your business at all?
Yes, in the very beginning it did. You know, unfortunately, COVID has it just has made people maneuver very differently, health wise, money wise. So, you know, we definitely were impacted. And as time went on, we've seen a little bit of our customers increase little by little. So we're definitely grateful to still be open during this whole pandemic.
And where are you located?
We are at 4114 Frederick Avenue.
Okay.
Yep.
It's not too far from my office, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, we're in Irvington.
Okay, so are you going to be taking advantage of the restaurant revitalization fund that the federal government opened on Monday or Tuesday? We definitely want to pass that along to all of our local restaurants.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely be looking into that.
Yeah, I'll send some information to your councilman. There's, I think the U.S. Black Chambers is doing something to ensure that minority businesses get some priority with that. And so I'll make sure he has all the information because we definitely want to see you succeed. So if you could just tell us some good items on your menu, some of the favorites, so I can get nice and hungry because it is dinner time.
So some of our favorites, or some of our customers' favorites, are they love the French toast. The French toast is definitely a #1 hit with the kids and the adults. They love the shrimp and grits. We have something called the Maryland crab shrimp and grits, and that's basically like jumbo lump crab meat. You get shrimp, and then it comes with like a Maryland sauce. So if you like Maryland cream of crab soup, you would love that because it's just like Maryland crab right over top of grits. We have deep fried salmon. We have a ton of stuff. Like, yeah.
So what are your hours? Because I know, like for myself, by the time I like make it back across town from where I am in the city to my office, it's like 8 o'clock. So are you open? Wow. I know. But like, what are your hours? So, I mean, because I want to stop by and try that. Yeah. So like tomorrow, right?
So before COVID, we were 9 to 7 on the weekend and 9 to 5 during the week. After COVID, during COVID, we are only open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that is Tuesday through Sunday.
Okay. Okay.
Nicole, you can always order it to and just have it at your office. So when you go home, it's ready for you to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we also have Uber Eats too. I don't know how far your location is from here, your office, but we definitely have Uber Eats. And if you do that kind of thing, we have that as an option as well if you're not able to come down.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Councilman, would you like to ask any other questions or highlight them in any other way before she goes? I know you're really busy.
Yeah, they are always busy. That's the thing. You gotta
we're actually closed right now, but we're just in here doing some small prep before the Mother's Day weekend. So yeah.
Are you having something special for Mother's Day?
We are. We're gonna have stuffed salmon and grits.
Oh wow! And are you available on social media? Do you have a handle for Instagram?
Yes. Our Facebook is Sugar Mamas. Our Instagram is sugar_mamas, and that's MAMAS_LLC. Yep, those are our two social medias.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm going to try. I didn't know about it. I'm so glad the councilman brought you guys on because I had no idea. And I'm definitely going to, you'll see me coming through in the next few days.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Councilman Burnett he's been a great help throughout the whole process. Ever since we opened, he's definitely been a great supporter. If I have any questions about anything about the neighborhood, he's definitely willing to help. So I think
wow.
Yeah, Nicole, you're saying wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. You're
in his district too. Just my office now.
Yeah. I know we got to move everything to his district.
I know. Come through.
Nice
come through.
Thank you. Yes, come down.
Yeah, I'm gonna Uber eat.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So everyone, try out Sugar Mamas.
I am.
Make sure you try them out.
Yep, 4114 Frederick Avenue, right here in Irvington.
Thank
And
you
call
so
ahead
much.
because they are very popular. So call ahead.
Yes, call ahead. Don't you come down here and just pop up on us. Call ahead. And you can find all of our information on Google as well. You can just Google us and push the
Okay, great.
direction buttons, and there it'll send you right our way.
Well, great. Hopefully you can get some of that restaurant revitalization funds and open back up full time.
Sure. Yep.
That would be great to see.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate you as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Man, that sounds good too.
Yeah.
Hungry now.
Oh, they throw down.
Right.
It is really good. I'm not joking though. You really either do the Uber Eats or call ahead, because if you try to just go in order, you can be sitting there like 30 minutes because it's just so
I'm
many
mad
people coming
though because
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
getting
it's a great
Chinese
problem to
food to the
have.
office.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And that's why I
Yeah.
embraced them when they first came in, because there was just nothing else like it on that corridor. There were
Mhm.
not. There's not. Literally, you said it. There's just Chinese food places. They're one of 3 Black-owned businesses on that stretch. And I try to make sure that I'm pushing all 3 of those as much as I can to help, whether it's resources to get through the pandemic, engaging them on neighborhood issues, or just popping in and just say hello. What do y'all need? Because they just don't have that sort of support, and that business corridor is a challenge. I mean, we've had a lot of violence along that stretch, and that can be really impactful for a small business and make them just not want to be here. That's one of the issues I have is I don't have a single sit down restaurant and including them. I'd love to see. I've been trying to like secretly try and find a space for them to grow because there's still a takeout. I don't have a single sit down place or coffee shop or anything in my district. And so to have, and definitely not a lot of Black-owned businesses at all. There's a few, but not many. And so for me, when they came in, I was like, no, we're gonna be friends, because I need you to stay. I'm so glad you're here. The food is really good. It's giving people an opportunity to see people. You go into a store, it's different when you see somebody that looks like you back there chefing it up. They hire from the community. All the things that we say we want to see in our city, they're doing it. They're living it. And so for me, I'm like, look, we got to put our money where our mouth is. If folks are doing the right thing and being value added to communities, then we need to support them. We need to make sure they have everything they need, and being very openly and intentional about that. And so I try to be as intentional as I can. So, and their food is good. It is, it's not good for you. I will say that. Like, if you're trying to be on a diet or anything, don't go there.
Yeah.
Or maybe eat a little bit. Eat it over a couple days.
Shrimp and grits.
But, yeah, exactly.
They're gone like 5 minutes and it's gone.
Oh, I tear it up. And my district office is across the street from them. And so it's very bad because I definitely will go grab some food and then sit over there and, maybe come back over and grab a little bit more. But yeah, which is why I gotta get a little workout in the night.
Wow. So can they are they going to redo the west side? What is that? Edmondson Shopping Village. You know how it's like all burnt up and stuff?
Yeah, so it's a challenge. We're working with them as much as we can, but also I'm holding them accountable because to have 2 fires in a 24-month period. Both fires were exacerbated by the conditions in the center. Non-working fire hydrants, issues with access, old gas lines, just infrastructure issues made the both fires significantly worse than they should have been. So the rebuild is going to be a lot slower. And they're not happy with me about it because I'm like, look, I'm not going to try and move this any faster than it needs to be, because at this point it represents a safety hazard for my constituents. Thankfully, in both fires, nobody was harmed, but those, that could have easily gone a different way. And so they are rebuilding. There is some construction work being done there, but it's going to be a lot slower this go around because we are very much trying to make sure that whatever comes back is safe for the people going in there to shop. And just trying to make it better. That's the challenge is like with that corridor, there's so much missed opportunity. With you have housing development across the street that's been a little bit stalled in the Uplands project. We finally got some infrastructure dollars through the budget this year to get that going, which I think can be a huge linchpin for the corridor. But there's just so much money that's going to the county. Folks leaving, Edmondson Avenue before the pandemic had about 40,000 vehicles traveling to and from every single day. And that was always my conversation with the owner of that property, is that like just the lack of options here means that people are going elsewhere, and taking their dollars out of the jurisdiction when they could be shopping here. And you know, it's a challenge. But yeah, we're pushing. I'm pushing as hard as I can to get them to reopen, but do it safely, so that we don't have a tragedy on our hands.
Thank you.
Nicole, do you want to ask the question that was posed about the Edmondson West Side?
A question came in. It's saying whether or not Edmondson West Side, did they lose 10 or so to a vocational program?
So that no, that didn't happen. So there was I've been working with the Alumni Association. Let me step back. The city school system has been taking a new look at their career and technology education programs across the whole city. And as they've been looking at them, one of the concerns that they've raised is that is it better? I guess that's sort of a theoretical question. Is it better to have several programs that are underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced, or should they consolidate programs and make sure that there aren't duplications? And so what they did was they did an assessment of every CTE program in the city, at every school, did a deeper dive, particularly at Edmondson, which is one of the larger CTE programs, and basically tried to figure out like what they could keep, and what they thought they could move elsewhere into a different school, or just get rid of altogether. But most of the changes were moving to other schools, nearby schools on the west side. And so, you know, and hearing that, immediately activated working with the alumni and the current staff and principal there to push back, frankly, because, you know, one of the things I know for sure is that, you know, I hate the comparison of like, if you don't want to go to college, do this. Because I mean, look, to be a carpenter is highly skilled. To be a welder is highly skilled. To run a business these are highly skilled professions that I don't necessarily view as like either or if you can't make it into, you know, a traditional 4-year school, then fall back on it. No, these are viable careers that we should be fully funding. And so we decided collectively to push to save those programs. And we're successful at keeping most of them. And so we had several community meetings. We turned out heavy at the school board, because this isn't something that comes to the council. It's done by the school. Ultimately, Dr. Sandalises has the final say with input from the school board. But one of the things that we were pushing back on, and it's still, well, having that fight, is around the carpentry program. So there was the final proposal preserves many of the existing CTE programs, but the most controversial is still the removal of the carpentry program. In exchange, they want to put a welding program, and they also want to move the programs outside of the West Side Skills Center building and into the main building. And that's something that I thought was coming at some point anyway, because the you know, I had a lot of conversations with the principal there, who was actually my middle school principal. So we go way back to my Chicopin days. And he had always raised concerns about having one budget for 2 schools, essentially, because the West Side Skills Center is its own, you know, gas, water, heat, teaching. I mean, everything that it takes to run a building without additional funding to operate it. And so there was always this thought that they would reconsolidate. But with that meant that there would need to be infrastructure investments in the main building, as well as potentially cuts to programs as a result. So, and I can send the full list, but I think the ones that weren't able to keep were cosmetology and carpentry were the big ones. But they shifted it to welding, and there still may be an opportunity to preserve the carpentry program, but they still have the ROTC. There will be an engineering program, an IT program that'll still be there as well. And these are good. Oh, culinary is going to be moved to a different school as well, which is sad because those kids could throw down. I've had their food several times. I think we should do a whole show about food. Apparently, I like to eat, y'all, and those kids could definitely throw down. And so it was a lot of tough conversations with that. And basically what we've been told is that, the gap in funding to keep the carpentry program or to move it to the main campus would be about $1.5 million, and that would just be to retrofit the building to be able to accommodate the ventilation systems and a few of the other structural needs that the main building doesn't currently have. But to shift it a little bit, I think it really also speaks to just the underfunding, the systemic underfunding of Baltimore City schools. There's this narrative that we are overfunding the school system, and it's just not true. And even by the state's own projections, the state has been underfunding city schools over $250 million by their own analysis. And that was a surprise that they would even release that, because the governor has been one of the biggest critics of city schools. And so, the push that I was, in these conversations I've had with the school system has been, yes, we need to fight and with the alumni. Yeah, we need to fight to preserve the programs here. But the larger issue is that we're having to have this conversation anyway, right? Like, all of these programs should be robust. All of them should have all the things that our young people need to thrive, and we don't have enough money to do it in the way that we should. And part of that, the city needs to contribute more to the school system. A lot of it, more money needs to come from the state. And people will say it's not about the money; it's how you spend it. It's very much about the money, because we have some of the hardest to educate young people in the city. We have so many young people who've experienced trauma every day. We talk about violence in Baltimore, who may live in disinvested and underinvested communities, who may speak a second language. It is a very unique city, and our young people deserve it, frankly. We find money to spend where we want to prioritize, and the money's there in the richest nation and in the richest state in that richest nation and in the world to do the things that we need to do to invest in our young people. And yeah, can the school system do better with how they spend the money and be more strategic about the use of those funds? I'll be the first to say it. But you cannot tell me that we are overfunding schools when we have heating systems that don't work, water fountains that are not drinkable, buildings that were built in the 1950s and that haven't really experienced significant investment in that entire time. I'll step off my soapbox.
So, I mean,
No.
if the schools are so bad, like building wise, why can't they sue the state? Because isn't that like a life issue? I mean, the buildings, kids can't drink water.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a question, the thing to look at. Is that something that could be taken up? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure what that would look like, but I mean, that was what the whole push for Kerwin was about, leveling the playing field, investing more in our young people, and we got that through. The General Assembly did pass the Kerwin recommendations that'll phase in over a 5-10 year period, and do a better job looking at it. And the city's going to have to pay more. City, as in City Hall, will have to contribute more. Right now, we do what is called the maintenance of effort, which is basically the minimum that we are required by law to put into schools. Those Kerwin recommendations are going to make it so that the city has to absolutely invest more in city schools, which I think would be ultimately a good thing for the city. But CTE is a big piece, especially when we talk about business, making sure that our young, and that was why I was fighting so hard for the carpentry program in particular, because those are the same young people that could be trying to get contracts. And hopefully by the time that they're in business, the MBE office is thriving, right? I don't know. We got to speak it into existence. We got a long way to go. But yeah, so that's what I would say about it.
Wow, thank you. You're so passionate, and again, you guys will never hear me come on this platform and really praise any politicians, but this is just one I just, as you can see, why and why I asked him to come on the show. He's truly passionate about doing the right thing. So now I want to get back to the MBE program, or just in general. When you're in city council, and this is something that Donnie and I have talked about, and it's something that I found when you were saying like you weren't really familiar with the MBE program. And when someone's not elected and becomes a city council member, you guys really don't get indoctrinated into the processes of the city, or, you just don't really know what's going on. And you really rely on the agencies. And what I found a lot of times is that the agencies, they report to the mayor. And sometimes there's that conflict between city council and the mayor. And that's where I found myself conflicted all the time, because my paycheck said the mayor and city council. So I felt like I'm going to report to both of them. But then you have some leadership that reports to the mayor saying, don't tell city council this, or hiding things. And I was never good at that. So I would just get the information somehow to city council, because I felt like you guys were really you had your feet on the ground with the constituents. And ultimately, when you look at the organizational chart of the city, you see the people on top, and then everybody else falls below that. So in my mind, I didn't really work for the city council or the mayor's office, and there's always that conflict there. But can you, describe to me, do you feel it is a disadvantage that you guys don't really know how the agencies operate, and you have to believe what they tell you? And so that's where you and I would be like, no, that's not true, but you don't know that. And then that's a disadvantage, and people need to understand that.
Oh, we are at a very strategic disadvantage, whether, because I think that there's a perception outside of City Hall that, we all sit around together and with the mayor and with the agencies and like talk to strategy and have the same access to information. And it is not like that at all. The mayors, we have one of the strongest mayoral form of governments in the country, period. Whether you talk about access to and control over the budget, the formation of the budget, how we fund offices, hiring and firing of staff, no seats on the Board of Estimates, essentially, which is where all the spending decisions come from, the contracting decisions come from. The council is not consulted on these things. Now, obviously, we can insert ourselves into the conversation, and we absolutely should. But it's about, as you said, like we don't even know what to ask or I don't know what I don't know kind of deal, right? Which is how I got involved in this work, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. I just knew something was wrong. Something seemed off. And I needed to reach out to you as an agency head to figure out, like, all right, what's happening here? But you're right. Like, you've always been very forthcoming and transparent and brutally honest sometimes about what's right and what's wrong, which I appreciate, because access to somebody that's willing to tell me the truth or give me all the information is rare in it. And it makes it more difficult for us to govern effectively when we don't have everything in front of us. So I don't know the full throes of information. I may have just a piece of the puzzle, and I need to ask the right questions or know who's doing what. Who I can take out for coffee to pick their brain a little bit and figure out what's really going on here. And so in some ways you have to play detective.
You're doing coffee for information. You never gave me any coffee. I was just dishing out information to you. I've completely missed out on that. But now that I know.
I gave you some sugar mamas at this meeting. But yeah, we are not at the same, it's not a level playing field. The council very much is not at the same level as the mayor. And the structure of government has made it that way. It's not, about any individual mayor or any individual council members. It is the structure of city government that places a lot of control in the mayor's office. Some people like that. Some people think that it is important to be able to say this person is in charge, this person is who we hold accountable. But what ends up happening, especially when you think about the budget process or expenditures that are coming out, the budget is the most important document that we pass every year, and the council doesn't see it until about 3 or 4 weeks. I still don't have the line item budget. I get it in another 2 weeks. Yet I have to vote on this at the beginning of June, and we have to pass it by July. So I don't have, whereas the mayor's office starts working on the budget with the agencies in July, August of the previous year. The capital budget is a 6-year cycle that we aren't included in. And so you really have to know what to ask. You really have to be driven to get it right and ask tough questions and push back along the way. Because it's just now I say this, and it's not all gloom and doom. We did pass several charter amendments in the last term that would give the council more control, because right now we can only cut the budget. We can't actually reallocate anything without the mayor agreeing to do that. And we have a provision that will be coming in 2022 or really 2023's budget cycle that will give the council more control and effectively more accountability, right? Because one of the things that a lot of folks say is that, like, why am I even talking to the council? Because you can't do anything about it anyway. Well, now we will have more control over the most important document that comes through the body, and we can be held accountable to that now. Yeah, we can move money around. Now when we get there. But right now it's about your ability to organize, your ability to just ask the right questions. But again, as a young, elected official, I don't always know what I don't know. So it's really hard. It's really hard work. You have to do a deep dive in.
Yeah, you guys will do these city council. You'll have your hearings, and I remember being so frustrated because I had that hearing with you guys in 2019. And I'm like, I don't have enough staff. I don't have any software. I don't have any money. The law department keeps stripping positions and moving it, and you'd say that to city council, and then the budget comes around, and it's like, darn, they approved the budget and they want us to fix the office, but we don't have the money to do it. So I do want people to understand how the process works, and city council is the legislative branch, and they are different branches of government, but and you all are part-time as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I can say this is all I do, but
right, but
yes,
it's
technically,
supposed to
yes,
be a part-time
it's supposed to be
position, and the city
part-time.
council president is the only full-time position, and so I just want to I'm not making an excuse for city council, but it is challenging, and then you have to be out there visiting constituents where some council members don't do that. So I commend you for that as well, knowing what's going on in your neighborhood.
Mine. And I don't want to at this point.
Yeah. So to engage and do all of that, it is complicated and it is difficult, and it's a challenge for you guys because the agencies generally are not they're not loyal to the city council, and they're just want to keep their jobs. And so you see what happened to me because I'm so mouthy. I was pushed out.
Which
so
I
that's
was
what happened.
afraid of when we started, and I think we had that conversation. I was just like, "Yo, she's telling me a lot about what's going on," and I appreciate that, but I'm also wondering, like, what does this mean when somebody is like speaking truth to power in an agency? Which, again, like, given the challenge, it's also just disappointing that like that's a thing, because given how many challenges we have in Baltimore City, you pick an issue, we have a lot of work to do. This is where we just need to be honest, like, about where we're at, like, as a city, as a government, as an agency. And you can see it in those budget hearings. I always encourage people to watch the budget hearings because I'm like, they're the most, one, it's the most important process that we go through, in my opinion. Two, it's like where you can really learn what every agency is doing, who's doing what. And I'll ask questions sometimes, like, I always ask the youth work director, like, well, how much money would we actually need to be able to hire every kid who applies for youth works? And it's never enough. We never have enough money for it. We never have enough money to fund the MBE, WBE office in a way that it could really provide whether oversight and accountability, to be able to push the agencies to be able to do more as it relates to engaging MBEs, WBEs. Like, it's just not there. And we even talked about like software solutions and technology solutions that, the money it just isn't there. And, and I think to the larger narrative for a second around like the police budget, and cutting the budget or not cutting the budget, like, this national conversation, like, if, this is why I've taken the position I take, that like the city, we spend $540 million, the allocation this year for the police, whereas the Rec and Parks budget is somewhere around 60-70 million or so. Our contribution to schools isn't anywhere near that. What we invest in MBEs and WEEs isn't even a percentage point of that. And so I think we can all agree that the city becomes a safer place when people have everything that they need to thrive. But we can't do that if we're only spending it on the police. And so it's not that, and I work with the police department. Like, I'm not in any way, I have family in law enforcement. Like, it's not in any way a judgment, but I also just know that like, we can't do the things that I think we all want to do and have a city that I think we all want to have if we are only continuing to approach this problem in the same way. Because I know in talking to, guys on the corner, like, they'll come to me quietly, like, yo, if you can help me get a job or get into this program, I'd rather be doing this than selling drugs. But then when you look at how we fund MOED, their ability to engage everybody that comes through, I don't even have a community action partnership center in my district. Like, so where are people getting the resources? Where are people getting the help? How are they, or transportation, right? Like, it's a huge issue in Baltimore. Like, literally, we had a hearing with the school system, and I asked about it in the CTE process as well, because they're moving, trying to move programs to other schools. And we had a hearing where the school CEO basically said if every young person showed up that was eligible to ride the bus, that needed to ride the bus to school, actually showed up to the bus stop on time to get to school on time, there are not enough buses to do it. And when we talk about structural racism, when we talk about structural deficiencies, that's what it looks like. This is not a boogeyman sitting in the back. It's we don't have enough buses and enough support to get our kids to school on time. So they all, there's be a percentage that will be late. And what does that mean for their academic outcomes? What does that mean for their choices later in life? If I'm late for school, in middle school and I'm failing, where does this place me later in this conversation around the choices that our young people make, and as a result, the violence and trauma that our city is in the throes of? You had a question, Nicole.
Right, and I saw Nicole about when you said the money isn't there, and I think he's saying the money isn't where it needs to be in the departments, but the city has the money, but it's just not allocated correctly, and they can't do anything about it. Is that what? Go ahead, ask your question.
Well, that's what it was. Because I just was confused with how they can create all these different positions, and they don't have money for software, money for compliance, money to put the kids on the school buses. I mean, just some of the things just don't balance, but that clarified it.
Yeah, that's right. When you see these offices like creating all these new glamorous positions with these heavy salaries, and then you're told, well, we don't have any money. The MBE problem has been a problem since the program was ever inception of the program, and the difference that it makes, like with the MOED, the hiring of local people, when those contracts are awarded to minority businesses that actually hire the youth, that it's hard for me to hear that, like, oh, we don't have the money, but you see all these new positions coming out of the woodwork and they're being announced, and all these offices are being staffed top heavy, but the people that actually do the work, those are the offices that generally don't have enough people, that the work that makes a difference. And so it's hard to watch, but what can you do?
It's the reality. I mean, I always say the budget is a moral document. We have a $3.7 billion budget. The money's there. Now, I'm not going to say like we have the resources that others, New York and DC and bigger places, bigger cities that, yes, they have a lot more to work with and can be innovative. And I don't want to make it seem like we have all of the resources that we need. It is tight. However, there are priorities that if we shuffle the deck a little bit, I would argue could make a huge impact. And I've been arguing that this would make an impact, around public safety and reimagining public safety. Because we think about the strongest neighborhoods, they're the most resourceful neighborhoods. They aren't the ones that, it's not about like who lives there, who don't, or who, what neighborhoods are asking for more or what council members are there. Like, there are structural issues that create the conditions that people live in. And if we aren't making bold decisions and taking bold steps to shake it up a little bit, we'll continue the cycle that we're in right now, where people don't have access to resources that they need. Our young people cannot get to school on time and into learning spaces that are productive and in large classroom sizes, or just every school should have a CTE program. Like, why are we even, thinking about it in a way that like we have to consolidate? Like, why do I gotta my kid to put my kid on a bus for to have to ride 45 minutes to an hour across town to learn? Like, every school should be robust, but again, it's about priorities, and the things that we prioritize and the ones that we don't are reflective of the city that we get. And the budget hearings are coming up, y'all. So
absolutely,
I was in today on the Board of Estimates. I was listening in today. It was very alarming today. Alarming.
Now, I was shocked to see how you guys don't get like a breakdown of what happens in the Board of Estimates.
Mm-hmm.
You see the city council president is there, and that's the role, but to roll that information down to the council, I guess you guys would have to actually watch it and then really know what's going on. And I found a lot of work I did with like Councilman Pinkett at the time, because I don't think I was bugging you yet, but I was always in his ear as well and saying like, we don't need this many contracts, or we're renewing this contract too much, or these people aren't even in the state. And, like just the money that we could save if we did contracting right in itself could fund and could share some money amongst in-state or in-city businesses or the schools. So there's a lot of money also being wasted on the way we contract things. I remember looking at a contract, where we like one agency was buying some like road tape, and then there was a contract that was awarded where the prime was bringing that equipment in. So it's like we were buying a lot of the same thing, and I don't know where the inventory was of all of this stuff, but it was a renewed contract that was always automatically renewed. So I just think taking a big look at everything, the whole thing, and you're right, having people that can be honest about it, which is difficult to find, because people want their job security, they want the job and the protection, and they don't want to be honest about it. They're gonna tell you the story that they think the mayor wants them to tell. And, not any knock against the current mayor or any other mayor. It's just the way it's been. I remember going to Brandon and saying, they're lying to you, right? Like literally when he was in city council. And so that's just how it goes. And I thought that someone coming out of city council would respect the role of city council. And so it's just the dynamic. It's just the dynamic of the city. So, so I did want to talk about, you are very, let's say, progressive. And I guess that doesn't help sometimes, depending on, your relationship with the mayors. And that kind of stung you a little bit. And we're not going to get too much into it, but
it did.
Were you taken? How is that affecting you now? Are you able to recover from being so progressive? Are you able to just show that you really do value the constituents? Can you explain how you're navigating the system now, as progressive as you are?
Yeah, it's a challenge because I don't think that I wouldn't say Baltimore is a progressive thinking city, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all, right? Like it's not. It's a more moderate town. Politically, it just is, and that's okay. Like
I was thinking slave masters more.
Well, however you want to describe it, I would say that the people's perspective, and I try to be careful about it, right? Because a lot of folks I work with, I think that they really do think they're doing the right thing, right? I don't agree with it as far as strategy, but like I think we're coming at it in a space where I would say like, oh, you think this is actually going to work? Well, let me help you understand why I think differently, and that's just nature of politics. But it is a challenge because again, we don't have a progressive majority on the council at all. It's only a few of us, and it's been that way for a long time. That's not new. But I think the difference now is that, having, 4 years experience, having lost a lot of battles, had been outmaneuvered by previous administrations and council presidents and colleagues, you learn from your lumps because like you said, you come in, there is no training for you. There is no orientation on how to write a bill or how to, literally you get a desk, a phone, a computer, and we say go. And do the business of the city. And so you very much, and I tried to prepare. Obviously, I was already, before I ran for office, I was I was coming to council hearings, I was watching what was going on, but it's still different until when you get there. And I remember even when I first budget, I reached out to my predecessor, Councilmember Holton, who was the budget chair before. And I was like, look, I don't need you to tell me how to vote on the budget, but they've given me 100-page documents, and I just need you to sit down with me. I will buy you lunch and coffee. I did buy coffee to just have her walk me through how do you think about the process? How do you where do the agencies try to hide stuff? Where are they not going to tell me? What are just give me everything and she did that as a transition for me, which was amazing because again, most important policy process was that. Was like, how do we spend money? What do I ask? And I watched a whole bunch of hearings that are on YouTube. Y'all can watch the Charm TV City Council channel where all the hearings are posted usually a day or so afterwards. And so I did that just to just dig in on that issue and many more, just to figure out how do I do this job? Because there is no training. You are thrown into the fire or the deep end of the pool, as my dad would say. You just got to learn how to swim. And so I'd say having made a tremendous amount of mistakes, having any way you want to describe those first couple of years in office, it was very difficult. So now that I've been around the block a little bit, and still, not as long as some of, Mary Pat was in 40 years. I mean, we had a lot of, in the last couple of councils, people who had been there for a very long time and that had that institutional memory. That was helpful for them. So I sought out mentorship. I sought out information, reaching out to agencies to, do whatever they could do to be successful. But yeah, I saw somebody put in the comments, there should be a handbook. There should be, because there is not one at all. You have to learn on the go. And in the city of Baltimore, where when I first came in, there were $100 million budget school shortfall in the schools. There was conversation about raising the minimum wage. We had a tremendous amount of violence. We were a year off of the uprising when I first came in. I mean, when I kicked off my campaign back in 2015, it was a week after the death of Freddie Gray, which I'll say the conversation shifted significantly because when I first started running, everybody was like, well, how old are you? And a whole bunch of just sort of skepticism. And then as things went on, it became, you could see that people really did want change, and really were open to new ideas and a fresh perspective. I don't think I've gotten it right all the time, but I think if nothing else, I've had agency folks say, well, if nothing else, the new members are asking questions that haven't been asked in a very long time, questioning things that we've just been doing. We've been doing it this way because this is how we do it. It's sort of the tone that I heard a lot in the beginning. Like, we haven't even looked at it or thought about it a different way. Thank you for asking. And we have new members now that are asking those same questions, that I'm looking at them like, oh, they're going to say this, they're going to say that, they're going to, I'll text them later, like, ask them this thing, ask about this program, because I've been around a little bit more. So, but it still have a lot of growth, and I still do seek mentorship from folks who've been around, because it is challenging to come into the amount of challenges that we have in the city, and try and fix them all, which you can't. So what I've learned is, like, look, I'll find my lane. I've done a lot now recently on the issue of MBE contracting, and I very much plan to continue in this term to just like ride it and make that a priority. In the last term, I focused a little bit more on like issues of human trafficking and just sort of like government structure and how we operate, was sort of where, because I told people, like, if we can't do the basic things right in city government, you're not going to trust that we can actually make the structural reforms needed to move the city forward if we can't get trash picked up on time, or water bills that are accurate, or heat in schools, like basic stuff that we got to figure out how to do better, and then we can tackle the bigger issues. And so I spent a lot of time in the first term just like focused on, like, it was just, how does government work? How do we deliver service? How can we do that better? And doing a deeper dive. Now that I have a little more experience, I think I can take on much more complicated issues like business contracts and still working on the issue of human trafficking, and other topics, social issues that are important to me. But I do feel more confident that, like, regardless if I'm leading a committee or I'm just a member of the committee, which was a huge shift, that now I can just sort of focus on.
Yes, there was a huge shift. You were removed from your chairmanship of a lot of committees, but I'll leave that for another discussion.
Yeah, it's tough, but at the end of the day, I still feel like I've put more bills in the last 4 months than I did in my first 2 years in office. So I'm grinding. We're rolling.
Absolutely.
And still trying to be as on the ground as I was the first 4 years with my constituents and my community.
So where do you think that the city can turn around? Because
I do. Look, I've been a little bit more jaded than when I first came in. I ain't gonna lie to you. Your Facebook memories pop up, and I had one when I first won, and I was like, man, I can still see the hope in my eyes. Look at that kid. He believes. But I'm joking. I still do. I really do believe that we can turn it around. But I think it's about being I think what the expectations need to be very honest, right? Do I think we can turn it around in a year? No. Do I think we can do it in 5 years? Maybe. I think we can see some substantive changes, but when we talk about whether that's infrastructure or vacant houses or just the generational impact of violence and trauma as it has on the psyche of young people, like, there's literally research that shows that the brain structure of young people who have experienced that kind of trauma changes. There's a whole ACEs study that was done that looked at the impact of violence on brain development, on emotional development of our young people, that is going to be generational. And so digging out of that hole and what that means on how our young people, whether they, how they get through school, do they choose violence themselves or retribution, or just literally mental health challenges that come with it, are going to take a lot of time. And I think it will reflect in other areas that will also take a lot of time to turn around. Having 17,000 vacant properties ain't a quick fix. And it's funny, I'll share this one little tidbit. So I every couple months I do these walks along Edmondson Avenue with my staff, and other corridors as well. We do these like corridor walks. But when we did one last year, we looked at Hilton to Woodington and counted every single vacant, and did a deeper dive into each one of them. And at the time, there were 38 vacants just in that small window, a couple blocks, which is a lot. And 36 of them were privately owned. I did a walk this morning, same corridor. We have 6 less on that stretch. which may not sound to your listeners like a big change in a year. But for me, I'm like, well, look, if I can keep hammering away, because what we do is we do code enforcement, we send letters to the property owners, we try and like push for development, we try to push people to buy, like trying to do everything we can to get people in those homes. And the way I see it is like, look, 6 from last year just means that like in 4 years, that'll be, if I stay at the same pace, that it's 24 less vacant properties on that same stretch. Now that sounds, again, like slow, very slow progress, but the impact that it could have if we can get to 0 on that corridor and get those, houses that are boarded up, get families in them, get homeowners in them, means there's less trash, means there's potentially less violence, there's more people who are living and working in our city, and staying here, because we lose a lot of people, which makes a huge difference. When we talk about like how per pupil funding or how we pay for infrastructure projects, we need people here. We cannot continue to lose people to other jurisdictions. And so to answer your question, can we turn it around? I think we can, but I think it will take a very focused attention on very key issues and just not letting off of them, right? Pick the topic, whether it's minority business or whatever it is, housing or school funding, and we got to just dig deep and stay focused on it, and not let up. And
So
that's my take on it.
Asking if you'd like to be mayor, and I try to tell him I want him to run for president.
He can plead the fifth.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he's gonna plead the fifth because that's just his style. But I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got to play your ball game. We're gonna wrap the show up. Again, I really appreciate you. You guys know I do not talk about politicians, but Councilman Burnett, I thank you for what you're doing. We're gonna keep working together to crack away. And the fact that he even still communicates with me, even though I've been blacklisted in the city, says a lot about him. He's trying to get some things done.
You are the person that I know knows the most about this issue, and as long as you keep picking up, I'm gonna keep calling.
And I'm gonna keep on picking up. And then I thank you for taking my tirades when I'm like, "What in the heck is this and that person doing?" I know he's like, "Oh my God, here she goes again." But I appreciate it. You're very patient with me, and you hear me out, even if it's one of your friends. You're like, "All right, let me just let her blow it off." So thank you.
Thank you, and thank y'all for this platform. Thanks for all that you do to spotlight business in Baltimore. We need these platforms. I saw Donnie popping in. Thank you, Donnie, for the opportunity to come on, for creating this show for our people, to be able to have these conversations, to have these issues, spotlight businesses, making sure we're supporting them, and spending our dollars and keeping it in the community. So thank y'all for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a great game and watch that ACL, because we're getting a little older in those ACLs.
It's true. I need to stretch it a little bit more than I used to.
Okay, I'll be texting you or calling you very soon. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.